Without any sort of hostel within the bandit camp, we found a small campground within the far northwest corner of the location and settled there for the evening, pitching our tents and eating our rations under the evening stars. The next morning, we took the road north out of the bandit camp, itself leading some 10 to 12 days north toward the Nararian plains. But only after an hour or so of traveling, we quickly discovered a tiny trail heading due north toward the edge of the forest beyond. Surely this was the path leading to Khaldun's Deathcrypt, and we assumed it was the way the undead had been taking to steal into the bandits' camp to wound and kidnap its inhabitants. This is where it gets dangerous, Sainairs began, perhaps stating the obvious. Everyone, be on your guard. Conducting a quick search of the area, we didn't find anything other than muddy tracks leading north. What was that? Ariana suddenly cried out, hearing the snapping of nearby vegetation. A moment later, several armed skeletons leaped forward to attack, nearly surprising all of us. As they rushed forward, we also noticed what appeared to be several skeletal clerics, about to assault us with evil cleric magic. Additionally, 5 regular skeletons and 2 skeletal archers attacked us, along with 3 crimson skeletons that appeared like regular skeletons but were blood red in color. Worse, as we bashed the crimson skeletons with our weapons, they seemed to regenerate, making them much harder to defeat. Recognizing that the 2 skeletal clerics posed the greatest threat, we concentrated our attacks on them, Sainairs summoning his spiritual hammer to help crush the undead clerics. In return, one of the clerics cast Hold Person on Sainairs, immobilizing him for the remainder of the battle. After several minutes of frenzied combat, the last of the skeletons went down, and I wondered about the more powerful undead we had just encountered, surprised by their abilities and strength. Searching the destroyed bones of the various skeletons, we soon found a scroll of Remove Curse on one of the undead clerics, and I handed it to Redfern for safekeeping. Skeletons that regenerate? Sainairs then cursed, frustrated by the experience. Undead clerics that can cast unholy magic? I've never heard of such things. We're dealing with a powerful necromancer, Cartha responded, herself angry by the encounter. Who knows what else we will encounter at this death crypt? I will smash em all to pieces. Eswin exclaimed, his own hatred for the undead apparent. Let's go. I nodded, and Eswin led the way forward, continuing down the tiny path north toward the chapel ruins beyond. Following the trail north, we soon reached a small chapel that had been heavily damaged. Its front door was missing, fire had ravaged the building, and much of the ceiling had collapsed. This was likely the way into the Deathcrypt of Khaldun, and we cautiously approached. Before we could enter the ruin, however, we had to take care of another large group of undead that seemed to be guarding the place. This group consisted of 3 ghouls, 4 zombies, 7 skeletons, and 4 skeleton archers. The ghouls were especially troublesome, each of them attacking with their claws and a bite that, to non-elves, could paralyze them. Indeed, Ariana was bitten by one of the ghouls, but her elven ancestry prevented her from being paralyzed. Fortunately, Sainairs and Cartha were able to turn nearly half the undead, and the rest we bashed into oblivion, destroying them forever. Now that a path to the chapel had been cleared, it didn't take long for us to pass through the open doorway of the chapel and into the damaged construction itself. The damage here within the small church was even more obvious, and I was surprised the structure was still standing. A dull orange glow from a pair of burning braziers cast a variety of dark shadows over everything, warning us that someone, or something, must dwell here to keep the braziers burning. Studying the ruins, and the way everything lay about, I deduced that a significant battle had occurred here, likely the fight that led to Khaldun's original demise. Indeed, skeletal remains still littered the floor, deceased combatants who were non-animated and not a threat. What's that, back in the corner? Ariana asked, her elven eyesight keen even in the low light. Taking a look, we discovered a spiral staircase of stone leading down into inky blackness. We had found the entrance into the death crypt itself. Eswin looked to me and then nodded, ready to lead the party forward and into certain danger. Reaching the bottom of the stone spiral staircase, we emerged into a large, dark crypt, some 50 feet in diameter and certainly intimidating. Dusty bones littered the floor while large cobwebs stood everywhere, especially to the west. An imposing demonic fountain stood in the center of the tomb, while what appeared to be a large, crumbling sarcophagus stood against the far northern wall. While paths led away to the left and right, we would need to do a search of the chamber to learn more. Ordering the party to begin a careful search of the crypt, it took less than a minute before a variety of shapes began to stir on the floor. Keeping our distance, we watched, with little surprise as a diversity of undead stood to their feet and turned in our direction. Another battle with the monsters was imminent. This time, 4 whites, 3 crimson skeletons, 5 zombies, and 4 skeleton archers assaulted us, requiring every ounce of skill we had to defeat. Given the numbers, I decided to use one of the magical skeletal seeds we had found in the barn back at the Baron's mansion, the seed quickly germinating into an undead hero who attacked the undead around us and fought on our side. Again we persevered, though some of us were moderately wounded and needed magical healing from Saint-Airs and Cartha. The only thing I hate more than skeletons are skeletons that can regenerate. Eswin cursed, referring to the crimson skeletons just defeated. What other horrors are in store for us here? Necromancy can do that, Cartha responded. Likely the result of this Khaldun we're here to destroy. Now free to search the chamber, we noticed that some sort of black liquid was regurgitating within the demonic fountain nearby, and that the closed sarcophagus looked slightly ajar. Massive spider webs dominated the hallway leading away to the west, while a tall pile of rubble, perhaps from a cave-in or ceiling collapse, blocked the corridor to the east. Somewhat surprised to find the sarcophagus slightly ajar, we readied ourselves for combat again as Eswin pushed the cover aside, fully expecting something, even the necromancer Khaldun himself, to leap out and attack. Instead, a lone human meekly rose from within the tomb, the young man scared half to death. Dressed as if about to go to bed and shaking like a leaf, the human looked to us as if seeing a ghost, his eyes as wide as they could be and his fear so strong we could almost taste it. "Who are you?" the timid stranger asked. "We could ask the same thing," Eswin replied, lowering his guard. "The undead kidnapped me one night," the fearful human began. "I was brought to this horrid place. I think they wanted to make a monster out of me." "You must be one of the bandits stolen in the night," Ariana responded, holding out her hand to help the nearly naked man from out of the sarcophagus. "What are you doing here?" "They brought me to a chamber, somewhere in that direction," the human recalled, pointing toward the east. "There were others, too. I escaped, and I've been hiding here since." "Sisla smiles on you," Saint-Airs said, happy to have rescued the man. "What can you tell us of this place?" "There is another tomb, a sepulchre, where the kidnapped are being turned into undead." The man replied, still quite fearful. "Into undead? Please, help me get out of here, now." "The way back is safe," Eswin informed, pointing toward the spiral staircase to the south. "Climb the stairway, escape through the doorway and run like hell back to camp." The man stared at Eswin, his face blank as if he hadn't heard a word at all. Offering some words of encouragement, I was then able to convince the young man that he could indeed flee the Deathcrypt and make it back to the bandit camp on his own. The barely dressed soldier nodded, then dashed for the spiral staircase beyond, out of sight a minute later. Heading east in the hope of finding the other kidnapped bandits, we soon approached a large pile of stone and rubble scattered across the floor, blocking our way to a small hallway leading north. From the look of things, we couldn't tell if several massive pillars here had tumbled and fallen or whether the ceiling itself had partially collapsed. Either way, getting past all the debris was going to be challenging. Instructing my heroes to clear a path forward, we spent nearly an hour moving the debris, the larger rocks quite difficult and requiring all our combined strength. Fortunately, nothing jumped out at us from the shadows and attacked, and soon, enough of the floor here was cleared for us to continue east and toward a small hallway leading north. Then, without warning, a small section of the ceiling began to collapse again. Fortunately, everyone within the party managed to dodge the larger rocks and debris, escaping what was either a simple accident or a very clever trap. Continuing forward, we soon reached a small corridor leading down 10 feet. Following the hallway, we then found a bloodied altar sitting amidst a gloomy, cramped charnel house. Atop the altar was a wax idol carved into the shape of a black dragon, perhaps 3 feet tall and rather monstrous. Racks of bleached bones lined the walls here, while beetles scuttled across the stone floor. I felt a chilly draft, but I couldn't tell if it was from the idol perhaps or just the walls and floor. The black dragon idol naturally attracted our curiosity and I moved toward it. As I did so, however, I heard what sounded like strange whispering. Stopping to listen carefully, the whispers seemed to follow some sort of rhythmic cadence, almost as if a group of clerics were reciting a hymn in the far distance. The experience was eerie and I wasn't sure what to think. Long Tora, I sense evil magic coming from this idol, Redfern warned, holding up an arm to keep me from advancing any further. Possibly a curse, we need to be very careful. Redfern thought about it for a moment, then reached into his robes and retrieved the scroll we had found on one of the skeletal clerics earlier, a scroll of remove curse. Reading the scroll, Redfern then directed its magic upon the black dragon idol. If it were indeed cursed, the scroll should have just removed that curse for us. Indeed, I no longer heard the strange whispering emanating from the idol, confirming that whatever curse may have been laid upon the object was now negated. Cutting into the idol, I then found a strange iron key, which I placed into my backpack. There also appeared to be a few other small items within the ruined idol, a cache of small gems that we quickly helped ourselves to. It's getting even colder here, Ariana announced, the young elf starting to shiver. Do you feel that? Trespassers. A wicked, monstrous voice then called throughout the small chamber, filling us all with dread. Death to you. From out of the far wall above the bloody altar came a small group of wraiths, each of them reaching out to drain our energy levels. Quickly, 4 wraiths descended upon us, their mere touch upon our flesh able to steal our living energy. Using their holy symbols, Sainairs and Kartha were able to turn the closest monster, the wraith fleeing the chamber to never return. The other 3 attacked us directly, however, our party fighting viciously against the marauding undead. During the battle, one of the wraiths scored a hit on Ariana, draining away some of her life energy and causing her to weaken. Soon, however, the wraiths were dispatched and the utter coldness within the chamber dissipated. Nursing our wounds, we then headed east toward the antechamber to explore the area where the human we had just released said he had been taken captive. As we entered this chamber from the western doorway, we immediately saw what appeared to be several standing skeletons on fire. However, the flames didn't appear to be harming them as they stood guard. They had to be another type of special skeleton here within the death crypt. Huddled in the far corner were 4 or 5 human prisoners, likely friends of the young man we had just helped escape from the dark crypt a little while ago. The prisoners were utterly terrified of the skeletons and likely couldn't be freed unless the skeletons were destroyed. We then heard a horrible scream from the south, where stone stairs led up to another place we couldn't see from our vantage point. Needing to learn more, I ordered the party to try sneaking past the skeletons, getting down on our hands and knees and staying against the wall as we headed toward the southern stairway, keeping to the shadows to evade the blazing skeletons. Soon reaching the stairway to the south leading up, we found another chamber bathed in an ominous red glow, the light flickering as if coming from a torch or brazier. A dark shadow of something tall bounced off the ceiling of the chamber beyond, moving about, but that was about all we could see. Another scream then erupted from just beyond the stairway. Surely someone was being brutally tortured beyond and we needed to save him. Unfortunately, the skeletons then noticed our party alongside the stairway and turned in our direction, about to attack. As we engaged the fiery monsters, I sensed that they were much stronger and more durable than your typical animated skeleton. The bones themselves appeared to be almost black in nature like tar, the dark substance apparently the source of the fire. While there were only 3 of them, they proved quite the adversaries. Not only were they more difficult to hit and do damage to, but the fire was so intense that we were scalded each time we struck one of them. Trying one of the vials of holy water given to me by Xerxes back in the bandit camp, I did score a direct hit on one of the skeletons, the holy water damaging it badly. After another minute or so of intense combat, the last of the fire skeletons went down and my party immediately jumped to the human captives cowering in the far corner, too fearful to even greet us in victory. Making our way toward the 4 cowering men, Eswin was the first to call out. "Are any of you injured?" The captives shook their heads no as they looked at one another, still not believing their good fortune in having been rescued. Eswin then pointed toward the exit leading west and back out of the dungeon. Then go. Get out of here. Return to the camp, the way is safe. The frightened bandits paused a moment, still not sure of themselves. Eswin then raised his sword to strike, perhaps fearing Eswin even more. The men leaped toward the western doorway leading into this antechamber and were gone moments later. Yet another horrific scream wailed from the south, where we saw additional activity from our current vantage point. If we wanted to have any hope of saving the man being tortured, we had to race south into the sepulchre immediately. Quickly climbing the stairs leading to this dark tomb, we found the sepulchre bathed in an ominous red glow, a burning brazier providing adequate light in the center of the chamber. A towering necromancer statue stood in the far southwestern corner, while a brass gong hung in the southeast corner. Our attention, however, was drawn to the dark figure standing alongside several long tables surrounding the brazier. Armored in sturdy plate mail and mostly silhouetted in the light, the figure looked humanoid as it turned to us, its eyes glowing a dark, evil red. Who are you, who dares invade the tomb of Vetula? Maintaining our distance, I gazed upon this Vetula, trying to determine what manner of threat the humanoid monster represented. Clerics, is this thing undead? Eswin asked, fairly sure that it was. Let's try turning it, Kartha responded, seizing her holy symbol as Sainairs did the same. Pathetic. The figure from beyond merely ridiculed. Vetula snapped his fingers, and suddenly 8 corpses lying on the tables here in the chamber sat up, their eyes also glowing a fiery red. The newly created wights snarled at us, then leaped in our direction as Vetula retreated into the southeastern corner. Their holy symbols already out, Sainairs and Kartha managed to turn 3 of the monsters, reducing the number of attacking monsters to 5. My heroes made short work of the wights, then turned our attention back toward Vetula, now in the southeastern corner of the chamber. As we rushed to attack, Vetula retrieved his battle axe and used its hilt to bang the bronze gong. The sepulchre rumbled and we halted our attack, looking about. A moment later, the domineering necromancer statue in the southwestern corner suddenly came to life. The inorganic monster held out its hands, spraying molten fire out of both. It looked to be a formidable opponent. As if that weren't enough, several demonic gargoyles then climbed out of the burning brazier alongside our party, attacking us as well. For the next few minutes, all of us fought desperately against the inorganic combatants, doing our best to avoid the sprayed lava as well as claws and bites from the gargoyles. Soon, however, all the stony opponents had been broken into pieces and lay destroyed on the floor. Angered by our perseverance, Vetula cried out, howling into the dry air. Moments later, several fiery, wolf-like creatures appeared just behind the dark warrior, their eyes glowing a bright red as well and certainly monstrous in origin. Now, all of you die, and become soldiers for my master's dark army. Vetula leaped forward with his serrated axe, the group of hellhounds attacking us as well. A monstrous battle wight, the 2 clerics tried to turn Vetula but he simply laughed it off, swinging wildly with his axe as well as attempting to level drain us as wights can naturally do. Additionally, the 3 hellhounds all attempted to breathe fire on us, the canine monsters biting us in between their breath weapon attacks. The battle seesawed several times, both Eswin and Ariana badly wounded and needing a lot of magical healing to remain in the fight. Eventually, however, we got the upper hand on the monsters, first putting all 3 hellhounds down before finally defeating the battle wight, the undead creature screaming one last time before going down for good, never to terrorize again. The battle wight said we were to become soldiers for his master's dark army. Ariana began, licking her wounds after all the combat here within the sepulchre. Which implies we haven't yet found Khaldun, Kartha added, a little frustrated. Our encounter with him will likely be even more challenging. If we can find him, Redfern added. This crypt is proving more difficult to negotiate than I would have imagined. Let's see what else is here, Eswin suggested, prompting us to begin a search of the tomb. Studying the brazier there in the middle of the chamber, it appeared that some sort of item, perhaps a key, lay within its burning coals. Of course, the coals were red hot, so retrieving the item wouldn't be easy. Eswin ordered everyone to stand back, then used his legs to carefully push the brazier over, causing its burning contents to spill all over the stone floor. It didn't take long to separate what was definitely a key from the smoldering coals, but it would still take hours, maybe even days, to let the key cool by itself. So, using the contents of one of my water skins, I slowly poured water over the key, cooling it much faster. Perhaps 10 minutes later, the brass key was cool enough to take and I added it to my inventory. All the threats neutralized here and little left to do, we took the stairs to the north, providing the only exit out of the sepulchre. Our party badly wounded and our spellcasters exhausted, it was also time to look for a place to camp for the evening, rest, and recover. Back within the nearly empty antechamber where we had rescued the kidnapped bandits, there was little left to see or do here as well, save for the large sarcophagus standing against the northern wall. I gave Ariana a nod and she proceeded to try and open the sarcophagus, just to be sure there were no more bandits hiding inside. Examining the sarcophagus, we quickly recognized that the object wasn't a separate thing, it was physically attached to the northern wall here. Inspecting it further, I then found a hidden switch which opened the sarcophagus, revealing a tunnel north. Entering the tunnel, we followed a narrow, crooked passageway perhaps 25 feet long, soon reaching a tiny chamber. Here, we found two small, wrought iron chests, locked and likely containing things of value. Looks like we found some hidden treasure. Ariana suggested, rather surprised. It's probably trapped, so we need to be careful. Assuming both chests were trapped, I carefully examined each one. The first chest contained a poisoned needle trap that I was able to disarm quickly, but I almost missed the poison gas trap set into the second chest which could have wiped us all out. Once the traps were disarmed, I proceeded to pick the locks on the chests. The first chest opened easily and we found a substantial haul, including 2,700 gold pieces, 1,400 silver pieces, some onyx skull earrings that appeared quite valuable, another scroll of remove curse and a wicked, lean dagger that seemed quite magical. The second chest proved impossible for me to pick and we just had to bash it open. Inside, we found 2,200 gold pieces, 4,000 silver pieces, 1,200 electrum pieces, 2 green stones, a magical mace, which I handed to Kartha, and a scroll of restoration, which Sainairs used on Ariana to restore her recent energy drain. The treasure proved quite the haul. Given that the tiny chamber could only be accessed by the hallway we had just used, it seemed the perfect spot to camp, rest and recover. Despite the evil and foreboding all around us, we made camp and did the best we could under the circumstances, healing our wounds, recovering our spells and taking the better part of a day to rejuvenate ourselves. We had cleared the eastern half of the Deathcrypt. Soon, we would need to clear the western half as well, likely facing Khaldun himself in a bitter battle to the death. And that's a wrap of episode number 21, Deathcrypt of Khaldun Part 1. Expect additional episodes every few weeks as the story continues. Looking